And you heard Melanie's introduction where she's on the innovation team. She is the second phase of that innovation team. It's been for you, this is
year 3.
Year 3, yeah. So Melanie wasn't part of this original, but she kind of picked up the pieces and ran with it and has really done, her and her counterpart have really done the lion's share of the work here. But some of the research and research that the innovation team dug into that they really wanted to look at for students in Wallingford was how do we increase the success of our students? And that was for all students. We had students that were making progress, but we weren't satisfied with all students and how successful they were being. And success means a lot of different things to a lot of different families. It doesn't just mean graduation. It means post-secondary career plans, and that was a piece that we really wanted to look at. Another piece of this was, how do we increase the value of the diploma? So does our diploma have the same weight and currency as other diplomas from other school districts? At some of the earlier sessions, the 5 that we did previous, we did have different representation from different higher ed organizations that talked about the transcript, that talked about the diploma and the admission process. So those are on our YouTube channel if you want to access those. And again, if you have questions around that, we can certainly entertain those tonight as well. Another piece was how do we increase student, parent, and teacher understanding of what we want our students to know and be able to do. So as teachers, we often know what's expected, but how often do you as parents or as students really know what does the teacher really want my student to know and be able to do? So that was another key component of this. And then as we mentioned, how do we best prepare them for post-high school plans? So what did the research find? Again, if you look at the picture on the left-hand side of 1892 and you look at classrooms of today, not much has changed. So we continue to do the same thing and hope for different results. And we know what that leads to. So our focus tended to be on student engagement and how do we increase that engagement. Some of our research results from researching show that 66% of students at the high school level are bored at least on a daily basis. 17% of those students are bored in every single class. And 82% wanted more opportunities to be creative at school. If you look at that in terms of how does that play out from elementary to middle to high school, you can probably expect as parents, because you've all lived through this, I heard many of you talk about middle and high school students, so you've gone through those elementary years where students are really highly engaged in school. Most students, they want to be there. The Gallup poll shows about 76% engagement through the elementary school years. It drops down to 61% in the middle school, and then a pretty drastic drop when we get to high school. So clearly we're missing something in how to engage students in that process. So that was the focus of our work. So the findings were that in order to increase success for all students, we needed to focus on engagement. Again, we knew that was a real lever for us. We knew that we had to have clear expectations of what we want students to know, that parents knew that, the teachers knew that, and we were held to the same expectations. We also knew that work habits such as perseverance, communication, collaboration, timeliness, needed to be a focus, but where do we put that? Because right now, often those are put together with academic grades, and you often can't separate the two in terms of, is it a work habit that my child's struggling with, or do they really not understand the content? Which is really what the last one is alluding to there, that we needed to reflect skills and knowledge in the grade and separate that out from extra credit that might be inflating grades, and homework completion, which is compliance, not homework that is actually for learning, that the teacher actually assesses. That would still count toward an academic grade. But if it's just completion to get to another level of understanding, how does that inflate a grade or not? So we needed to look at how do we separate those two out. So the recommendation was to move to that mastery-based learning system. And what is that? That's a teaching and learning system that's based on students demonstrating what they have learned. And demonstration is a key word there because it's demonstrating in multiple ways. Again, you'll see some examples of that as we go through the night, and certainly some questions will probably lead to that. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Carrie and Christy to talk about standards, and then we'll dig into some actual work around them.
So
she passed the buck to you again.
Yes, that's okay. So there's 3 components that as a school district we've been working on for the last year to year and a half. The first are the cross-curricular standards, and these are still in development, but these standards are exactly what they say. They're going to be hit in many different content areas, and these are your broad statements, something like problem solving, for example. we know problem solving is heavily hit on in a math class, but it's also hit on in other content areas. So you have your science, your social studies. It could be hit in many different areas. Your communication skills, your researching skills, so all of those types of things would be found in your cross-curricular. What we're going to be sharing with you today are the graduation content standards for math and language arts. So we've developed in all of our content areas, we've developed graduation standards. So social studies, science, world language, art, music, health and PE, every content area that you can think of has developed their graduation standards. The ones that we're sharing today, again, are just math and ELA, but these are your standards that we want students from day one that they become our students working towards and progressing through. So we have about 5 to 8 in each content area, and all the way down they're K-12. So for example, a broad content area graduation standard in math is algebra skills. And so you'll see that as you go to our breakout tables, but even kindergartners are setting up foundational skills that are leading them to be successful in algebra. Under those content standards are performance indicators. And so, as I said, the content standards are K-12. Your performance indicators are grade specific or course specific at the high school. These performance indicators are what we expect students to do within that grade level or course that tells us they're progressing towards meeting their content standards. Did I miss anything?
No, I think.
Anyone?
I think you did it.
Okay. Does
And
anybody have
I think
questions?
once they actually see them,
Right.
it'll
Does
be a
anybody
little
have
bit
questions on those at this point?
I do, and
Mhm.
that is, of course, if you have a certain content standard. Now, we all know that there are the advanced and more advanced students in the class. Now, how can you have one standard for the whole range of student levels within one class?
The content standard is a K-12 content standard. It's a very broad statement that all students are working towards for graduation. So that's a very broad statement. So for example, like I said, we have an algebra content standard, we have a geometry content standard, and then there's very specific indicators within a grade level that lead to that progression.
I do understand that,
Okay.
but here the question really hasn't been answered. That is, if you have a certain standard in geometry, for example.
Mhm.
Now, an advanced student will reach that obviously significantly faster than a weaker student.
Are you
No,
talking about the
So the
indicator or
you're
the
talking about
content
the next
standard?
layer down.
You're talking about the indicator?
Indicators.
Well, first the standard. The
Okay.
standard should be what's supposed to be known by, let's say, 100%. Now, the indicator just indicates how well the student is managed to come to that 100%. Yet, an advanced student will hit the standard much faster than a weaker student. And then what?
The geometry, well, the graduation standards are written broadly enough that we will not have students meet those until high school because they're very high level and each grade level is progressing towards those very broad statements.
But I think to answer your question, I think what will happen is at the performance indicator level, that's where it looks at the progression. So an advanced student, let's say in geometry, might be hitting, let's just say their geometry performance indicators. They might be moving along the progression further to higher level indicators faster than the student that might be struggling a little more with geometry. I think it's
So
terminology.
our indicators set up that progression of where they go next. So if they've met indicators for their particular grade level, there's a progression of indicators for us to know where to send them next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but do I
Right.
understand that correctly, that the content standards are covered so broadly that by the end, the weaker students and the more advanced students will be covered by those standards?
The goal is for all students to meet those standards. it doesn't matter which student they are. So our content graduation standards is an expectation for every student in our district. Now, in math, our content graduation standards can be reached by the time you hit Algebra 2. That doesn't mean we don't have students progressing to our higher level math courses. And for those math courses, we will develop performance indicators that are specific to those higher level. But the expectation is that all students will meet our graduation standards.
And if not?
That's where our support and interventions come in,
Right.
all along the way.
But knowing what the advancement and less advanced students can do in math, I have the feeling that in order for everybody being able to meet at least the minimum standard, that these standards have to be ridiculously low set.
They are not. They're aligned with our state standards, and they're aligned through Algebra 2 standards.
Okay.
I think once you see them, if you still have that question, let's come back to it, because I
That's
think
fine.
that might help you to understand. Were there other questions? I mean, we're a small enough group if you've got any burning questions.
I think, well, it's related to what he's saying. Will there still be like advanced placement classes, say?
Yes.
And like remedial classes? It'd still be the same things if necessary?
You mean the same thing.
Our classes, or we're not changing the structure of our
Right,
classes.
we're not changing, no, we're not changing. At
No.
this time, no, we're not changing the level of the classes. Any other questions at this point? No? All right, so do you want to break them up, or do you want to stay as one, like you did last night?
I think there's a lot of
Middle and high school, so we might want to make two groups?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So maybe we can have the parents that are on that side of the room will go and do the English language arts
Are you
breakout
middle
to
school and
start.
high school parents?
Middle school.
What?
Middle school.
Middle school?
High school.
Okay, good. I just didn't want to make it if we had elementary.
So
Very closely to the 5 domains within our state standards. So if you want to just read those, familiarize yourselves with the 5 domains. And by domains, I'm just saying the broad
That's fine.
heading. And then I have the indicators for you to take a closer look at.
Graduation standards 2 through 5. Our graduation standard 1 in English language arts is foundational reading, which is K-5 only. So that's why number 1 is not included in the middle and high school.
Who is developing those standards?
Those are based off of our state standards.
Okay. But are those specifically for Wallingford? Are they further developed from the state, or are those the state standards?
This is Wallingford statements
Yeah.
based off of and aligned to our state standards.
So if
So that
this-
sentence that you see there
Yeah.
is written by Wallingford teachers.
Right, so basically if the mastery-based learning concept is kind of catching on with other school districts, every school district will have an own mission statement.
But every school district
They
does
even
currently.
without mastery-based learning, they have a mission statement. Yes.
That kind of seems pretty redundant.
Well, that's where I think you get each specific school district to put its own touch on the mission and vision statement.
And sometimes your mission and vision have to be reflective of the community that you're representing. You know, so mission or vision of Wallingford Public Schools is going to be a little bit different from New Haven or from even Hamden, or so North Haven. You have to be reflective of the community you're representing.
In there.
No, a mission and vision is different. It's not
That's-
content specific.
Yeah, no, you're right. Are you? So I'm confused though, because are you talking mission and vision? You're talking about
Well, I'm
standards.
talking about these standards.
Okay.
I'm just using the synonyms interchangeably, which
Okay.
probably wasn't correct to do. But
That's all right.
these standards here, again, are those standards based on Wallingford or based on the state?
So there are two things. They're first based on state standards, and then we look at based on the state standards, are there additional pieces that we as Christy said, as a community want to weave in there or not? What we didn't describe, and we did this in the first session, So I'll just kind of throw it out there, and Rajan is part of that team. We have a district leadership team that is made up of Board of Ed members, community members, administrators, teachers, students, that every work around the standards or the indicators in every content area from teachers, we get feedback from teachers, and then it goes up to the district leadership team for review and feedback, and that district leadership team either sends it back to the work team or they approve it to send it on to the Board of Ed for review and potential approval. So it's not that we just created these standards and said, here they are. They've been through lots and lots of feedback loops. Rajan, I don't know if you want to add anything from your perspective on the district leadership team as a student there and how that's played out. I mean, the district leadership team has not accepted every single thing it's not accepted everything that's been presented. There's been lots of work that's gone back and forth. And there are some that they clearly said, yeah, the first try looks really good. Math is probably a really good example because unlike ELA, I think math tends to be cleaner, more clear cut, and less gray area. So I think that was one where district leadership team didn't have to do a lot of work because the math team that Christy put together was so content specific that they did really great work right from the get-go. So I don't know if you want to add anything. or if I
Just
captured
understand that this
for
is a
you.
process, and we didn't just create these arbitrarily, but that this has been sent through all key stakeholders in our district. to see
Right. The only thing I really want to make sure is that based upon the state standards, I have absolutely no problem if you raise that by 20%. I will have a serious problem if you lower that by 10%.
We are not lowering.
We didn't
Lower,
lower
no.
anything.
Okay,
No.
We did not
good.
lower
Then
anything.
I think that we're
Not at
clear.
all.
Yeah, no, we did, nothing was lowered. So, as I said, these are the 5 hierarching graduation standards. And then on these strips of paper are the performance indicators. And so what we wanted people to do is in order to try to become familiar with the graduation standards and how things are separated out, is to take a look at a performance indicator and do a sort, so to speak. So see which graduation standard you think it would fall under. Okay, does that make sense? Just to familiarize yourselves a little bit. There's no, there is some overlap, in some of them where they could fall in one area or the other. These are the middle school indicators, and those are the high school indicators. And they are they're heavy math language because they are content specific.
Just looking for some, I'm an English person, I'm a math person, so.
I think that's algebra because it has the variables. Complex and similarity is probably a number.
I used to spell it out, but it's become,
That's funny they just do
a little
that.
bit,
So I mean, I understand this part. I think the grades is what I was most, how that's
Yeah.
come in, because I know there was talk about, like he said, and I don't think too much homework goes in. It's like you did it or not kind of stuff, but the extra credit and things like that.
Yeah.
So, but there's still a kind of extra credit component, but it's really more let's get you to the level that you're at.
Right,
working,
so what we're trying to eliminate is sort of that inflation with extra credit that occurs.
You don't really know it, you just did something extra.
You just did something that really wasn't related to the assignment or to the learning, and
No, I got you.
yeah, instead it's that resubmit and continuing to progress towards mastery.
But there's got to be a point where someone's
Yeah,
We're gonna
and
have to
so,
respond,
right, and so that's where we've got our support staff that will, whether it be reading intervention or math intervention or ELL, or we've got some English language arts teachers are going to be looking at some additional reading data next year. So trying to pinpoint what it is to help, it's sort of getting to the root of it so that we can keep working with. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. At some point
But
that'll
it's
be
definitely be work in
something to-
progress. Mansell will have to open the budget on that one. Because that sounds like more people, right?
It actually
It
does sound like
more
you need
people.
So, and he's already having a
But
tough
we
time.
need more people.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so this activity was just for you to kind of get your glimpse at what the indicators will be.
No, I'm glad, because it sounds like it's like he says, what you're already doing, you're just breaking it up into
Yeah.
finer groups or whatever.
And then there's pieces in the cross-curriculars, which we don't have here today, that, like Christy said, there's research, there's communication, there's, which is speaking and listening. So those, a teacher could say, well, I'm going to be doing, a research project. I'm going to be doing a research assignment, I'm going to have the students do a presentation with it, so they can pull some cross-curriculars into that rubric for each one scoring on communication skills or, trying to instill kids to be self-directed, independent learners, resourceful. Not always asking the teacher for the information, but help them figure it out and find it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let me know if you have any more questions.
No,
All right.
thank you for
Thanks.
discussing it.
All right. How are we doing? Let's see.
Well, my wife heard.
Yeah, I heard it too.
Yes. Nice.
Instead of a grade, there's
Yes.
Yeah.
age of what they want.
Exactly. Yeah, how's that going to work? Well, it's good to know that the high school's taking it.
Yeah.
This category kind of tripped people up a little bit last night, just because a lot of them do,
To high school.
Learning the
that
process.
was the
Yeah.
research
Yeah.
but the way I see these are worded in the upper grades, it really is very specific to research.
Right.
Did you have any questions?
Seems like it gives you a lot out. I don't remember doing
Well,
much stuff when I was.
I'm sorry,
Oh, yeah. He thought he could bring it something out. I have to go back.
Here it
Like, he's doing something. I didn't know he's.
Yeah, I know.
I remember him
Yeah.
in high school.
Well, he was ninth grade. Yeah.
Yeah,
In gym.
They're still teaching now.
Yes. Yes.
It
It
will.
seems like this here is already stuff that they're doing.
They are. Oh yeah, our curriculum's not changing. This all aligns with our current curriculum and what we're teaching. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that was one of our big steps. We analyze the state standards. We decide what are the most important things for us as Wallingford math teachers, and then we look at our curriculum and make sure it lines up. So that was a big step, but it does line up very well.
So it's bringing a little bit more independence in there too for the kids, which can be good or bad, but right. I mean, it's
It
a little bit
definitely
more
does.
like you
They
said,
have
the
to take a
homework.
little bit of ownership over their learning. It's not just about what do I need to do to get an A. It's, well, what do I need to learn, to show that I've mastered this. So it really does bring the focus more about the learning than just getting grades. What grade is son or daughter?
Some, not sixth. So it'll
Sixth
be
grade?
seventh.
Okay. At Moran?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and my daughter's in sixth then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's all this I recognize.
Yep, because that's what they've been doing all
The
year.
surface area and all that, yeah.
Right, so that's what they've been doing all year, and all of those just fall under one of these. And it'll tell it, if they're meeting all of these, that tells us they're progressing here as they should be.
How will they have like kind of a chart, like a check things off, like the teacher says like you've mastered this and this, that type of thing? Or is it let's be more written out?
It's, a lot of them are per unit, so within a unit, you'll be concentrating on certain indicators, and yes, within that, and a lot of that we're still working out with the teachers because we're going to be experimenting with a lot of it next year in preparation for implementation the following year. So, and I think that the way the teachers manage it may vary individually, keeping track of things, but Power Teacher will be used to some extent as well.
Right.
So these indicators will be in our school.
Right. Okay, that's good.
So as you're saying, when you get the report card, you'll have this thing, and they'll all be listed in it, whether it's
Right. So
2,
when
3, or 4.
so when you get your sixth grade report card, you'll see these 5, and under the 5, you'll see these. So these
Right.
will all be under them,
Right.
and so you'll see their individual scores on these, and that will all lead to how they're progressing.
Is structured that way. High school, we just finished writing our senior
Common Core aligned courses. It's a little bit of a different animal at the high school, just because there's a certain culture that's been there for a while. So we're working on it, but there will still be a place for it. It's just a little bit of a different place for it. It's a smaller portion of it, especially like the block. So you had a chance to take a look at the math graduation standards and indicators. We have a similar activity here. We have high school ones here. We have middle school over here. I know you both have middle and elementary grade children. I don't know if you have a preference on which indicators you want to take a look at.
They did really well with math.
They
so.
did? Oh, good. Well, you know what? No matter which grade band you pick, you're going to see the same skills. They progress up, so it would just be at a different stage of development. So, whichever you have a higher interest in.
Or they might just want to pick your.
I have one going into high school and then one that's going into 8th grade.
Okay, so totally your call. So here's high school. I have 9, 10 here and 11, 12 here. And so basically we've just been having people take a look at the indicators and match them up under the graduation standards. In the English language arts, you'll see that there's only 4 graduation standards, 2 through 5. In the secondary grades, because graduation standard 1 is foundational reading skills. So it developmentally is a K-5 graduation standard. So feel free, whichever grade band. Middle school's over here. I have specific 6, 7, and 8. Do you have a preference? You have a question?
Personally, even the math didn't really answer any questions from you. It didn't do really good.
Okay.
I'd rather have a chat with you.
Absolutely. Let's have a chat. No, that's fine.
And what you just said is that you kind of want to encourage the kids to do a lot of out of school. You said reading and basically encourage the kids to learn for themselves, to be able to put things into context.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while I applaud that for a lot of students, I see a very intrinsic problem. That is, what do you do with students who are just blatantly refuse that, and by that method fall even further behind?
So the independent reading, and we're still working on tight schedule, especially in the middle school, should be incorporated in the school. Not necessarily daily, it's hard to take up instructional time daily, but periodically there should be time for independent reading or small group reading that would then be carried into sort of an extension. I don't want to call it homework because it's hard to say independent reading or outside reading is homework, but that would be an extension of the learning from inside. So there would be a certain amount of time allotted during the school time to do that. So, just like anything else, how do you get kids to do it outside and have it intrinsically motivated? Somehow there's got to be an evolution of getting kids to value it and seeing what it's going to do for them down the road. And that's something that we've talked a lot about as a staff. And I don't have a real magic, answer for you that's going to help, but helping them see the benefits of, being the master of their own learning and understanding themselves as learners is a part of it. And I think that this foundation gives them a little more insight rather than the A, B, C, D grades that they get right now. I think a lot of times there's an unclear ambiguity to what is behind some of the grading. So having just a clearer sense of the indicators that they might need to continue to work on and the ones that they're mastering helps them understand themselves better. So it's sort of going to be a process, I would say.
Yeah, but let me specify the question, please. And that is, as I understand it from before, the standards are certain things where the students, of course, can't be in the lower end and the higher end. Now you encourage the kid, or some of the kids, to actually do extra work at home and put that into context in school. Now what that happens, if this is the band, you actually adding quite a bit. Yet on the lower end, no one can fall out because everybody has to pass. Doesn't that mean that the bandwidth of those standards becomes so wide that it becomes completely meaningless?
Could you elaborate a little bit on the bands?
You
For
have-
example,
you have
right now, I'm
you
not sure
have
I'm
the,
following.
graduation standard.
Yes.
That means that is a concept that the kids has to master.
Oh, K-12, we're speaking of the standards.
Right.
I
mean,
got
it
you.
doesn't really what standard that is for 8th grade. There is a standard for 12th grade. There is a standard. Now, the standard obviously is not going to be the same for everyone because some kids are more advanced, some kids are less advanced.
Yes.
That means you have to give a certain bandwidth which the kids are falling into.
Yes.
Now, if they exceed the bandwidth, that's good. If they are falling below, as it was explained to us, that is not supposed to happen. Now, what you're doing on one hand is that you encourage the kids to do extra work, to put things into context, vocabulary, history, reading a lot of things. That means that the upper half of the band will become higher and higher, and it's basically just dependent on the top 10% of the class. Yet the lower bar, you cannot raise, because everybody has to pass. So what I'm fearing is that the standard bandwidth becomes so broad that it becomes itself intrinsically just useless.
A lot of the examples that I gave are meant to be embedded in the classroom, the
Yeah.
classroom environment, and underneath each of the graduation standards are grade-specific indicators. So there would be, for example, a grade 7 indicator in a certain area of writing. So students who are progressing, we're going to have a scoring guide to assess where they are in mastering a certain indicator. If they're at the upper band of that, then we could start to look at progressing into another grade level. If they're falling below, the scoring criteria would inform the student, the parent, and the teacher of what steps they need to continue to work on to meet the mastery. I'm not sure. I'm hoping I'm
Here
answering the
comes my
question.
problem with the whole concept. Now, you inform the parents, the students, that at the moment they're not up to speed, there has to be additional work. Otherwise, the mastery is just not there and won't be there for the future. Now, if the students does not conform to your ideas, what's going to happen then?
So what happens if they don't meet that?
If they don't meet that
so they-
standard, do we?
So I think we haven't, because we're not in full implementation mode, some of the conversation has been around, we know that learning is the most critical, and what becomes the variable is the time. So what ends up happening is it might be, and I don't know if you were there when I was saying this earlier, but it might be that some of those students need more time, which could be a longer school day, it could be summer school looking a little different than as we know it. There's lots of ways to look at that. Until we, and there'll be policies, part of the district leadership team that, and Rajan sits on a subgroup of the policy, of the district leadership team. There's a policy group that's looking at what policies do we need to have in place, which I think goes at what you're asking. So a student that doesn't meet this, doesn't mean that they are not moved on to the next grade. Doesn't mean that our policy around promotion and retention changes. That's all stuff that we're looking at right now. Does it mean that their extracurricular activity, does our policy around that need to look different? Because until we put a stake in the ground, to be quite honest, and actually hold people's feet to the fire and say, you know what, if you don't do this, we could offer all these supports, but if you don't do them, until we do something and really say, we're not going to promote you, or we're not going to allow you to participate in an extracurricular activity until you do these things, this could all be for naught. Because you and I know you can offer everything to families, and if they choose not to do it, then what? Which is what you're saying, which is why we need strong policy around those pieces.
Right, but I think here we come to the very critical point. You're saying that these ideas to make students what they're supposed to do are still being put in place. isn't that the most crucial piece before you go for the mastery-based learning?
Well, they will be, because our full implementation year is 17, 18.
Yeah.
They will be in place. They will absolutely be in place before that.
So you're basically saying that theoretically, even if you're at 10th grade, if you have not mastered the 10th or 9th grade level, you will be redoing the 9th grade.
You need not necessarily pieces of it, because there's probably pieces of that 9th grade. It could be a particular course, it could be particular indicators that you haven't yet shown mastery in, so you would need to show mastery in those pieces.
And how is that going to happen? Does that mean that the student sticks around in 10th grade and the teacher actually has now to regurgitate the 9th grade level stuff and everybody else in the class is losing out? Or is that student being sent down one class to the current 9th grade and the rest of 10th grade goes on?
I think there's two different ways to look at that, and I think that would be another piece of this layer is that's a piece that would be worked out with different families, because we also want to be aware of the social and emotional piece for students and the anxiety, because part of this is to help students to be really clear on what they need to do. So for some students, it could be that they go down. It could be that there's a particular time of the day where an intervention is provided around those 9th grade indicators that they haven't yet shown mastery in. So it's not a one, what this is the only way that we're going to do it, because we know that doesn't work for all students.
True, but something has to be done. And in
Yep,
the end,
absolutely.
There are certainly different approaches
Yep.
to the whole problem, but
Yep.
something has to be put in place, and it has to be put in place not as a recommendation, but absolutely meant.
A requirement. Yep,
Right.
absolutely. Rajan, do you want to say anything from the work around policy? Because I think that might speak clearly to
As
this.
he's been saying, this is a logistical issue largely, and it's the same issue that we're facing now with students who aren't succeeding and who just simply aren't putting in the work. We would absolutely not be lowering standards of any students. We have what's required in order for students to move on. And just logistically, the students who aren't moving on would be allowed to work either independently or in a group of other students who aren't moving on. Various teachers in our district have been implementing either small group work or opportunities for students to work on their personal weaknesses. That way they don't slow down the whole group. So that's the sense of being
That sounds good, but does that lead to the conclusion that students who not have mastered certain concepts by the end of the 9th grade, that they are denied graduation?
If that be what's necessary, yes, but throughout the school year we would be recognizing the issues. If there's a student who's meeting or exceeding a certain area during time that would otherwise be dedicated to that, might be rededicated just within the class or even outside of the class. Something that we've started at the high school level is periodically we'll give students just a free period that's their own for them to go see a teacher as necessary for help. So this becomes a logistical issue, and the answer to your question, if push comes to shove, yes,
Becomes also
students
very much a litigation issue, because we all know that if you start implementing a rule like that, if you deny a kid graduation or forcefully start holding a kid back, that the lawsuits will hit the fan fast.
Right, but I think that also part of the issue is if we're still thinking about individual grade levels, students might be at different levels in different subjects. So I might be in 10th grade in one subject, 9th grade in another, 11th grade in another. It's just like in our current system. If the student isn't meeting requirements, they will be held back.
Okay.
Just know that there will be more of these nights as we move into next year. A date to mark on your calendar, which I did mention to a couple people, is September 28th. If you haven't seen the documentary and Most Likely to Succeed, I know someone in the group was reading the book, yes, and highly recommends it. We will be doing that as a showing. Location to be determined. We're trying to have it at the local cinema, but that's not, the details of that have not been worked out yet, but at least know that that's going to be September 28th, which shows, and basically that chronicles a school district in California that has implemented this school-wide and what that looks like throughout their school. So we'll open it up for questions, if anybody has any.
If the, I remember from before, they had, if in a mastery-based situation, you handed a project, it's not to snuff, you get it back, he handed it in again, you keep handing it in again. Does that mean everyone ends up with an A?
Not necessarily. Nope. Part of, and you probably heard pieces of it, and Melanie can talk to this a little bit, but what we are developing is a toolkit for teachers. There's pieces of it that have been developed already, and one piece of that is when do we allow resubmission or redoing of work. You heard Sarah Sirkin talk about that's one of her next steps to look at. When does she allow, or how does she allow students to redo? The goal is that all students should demonstrate mastery. How long it takes students is where the variability would come. So it's not that everybody's going to get an A necessarily. Some kids are going to exceed that mastery. Some kids are not going to be there yet. I know we didn't show the scoring criteria. Maybe I should go back to that because that might answer a little bit of your question. Let me just show right there. Christy, do you want to talk a little about that?
So this summer, this is an area that we're still in development, but this summer, each of those indicators that you looked at under the graduation standards for math and ELA and all the content areas, we will be having groups of teachers work on scoring criteria for each indicator. So what does it mean to be a level 3, which is mastery, and what are the skills and the progression for students to show us that they're a level 2. It'll be really important for us to work with these scoring criteria over the next year and look at student work that falls in a 3 or falls in a 2 to make sure that we're aligned and that it is showing us what we want.
Other questions?
Well, let me ask you a very provocative question here.
Greg will take that one.
And that's for the teachers here, of course, all together as well. The teachers in the Wallingford district, do you think that they are very hardworking?
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, or perhaps you don't think so, because what I'm seeing with the mastery-based learning is that rather than teaching a subject to the kids in the classroom, you actually have to individualize very much to the student. Evaluation of the student and teaching will take much more effort and therefore much more time, which makes me kind of believe that obviously the teachers here have a lot of spare time in order to achieve these new goals, because it will take time, it will take effort. Where is that extra effort coming from? Because following the budget meeting, we're certainly not going to add any more teachers, are we?
Mm-hmm. Then do you want to take the beginning part from a teacher's perspective, and then we can. You don't have to.
I think it's just it's a readjustment to where the effort is being placed. Right now, teachers work very hard. You know, we're all working every day with our students to make sure that they're successful in each subject area. I think it's really just reevaluating where we put that effort. Collaboration is a huge part of mastery-based learning from the students, but also from the teacher's perspective. Working with your colleagues to develop plans so that you have multiple assessments that students can use to show their mastery for different areas, for different lessons, for different units, is something that we're going to have to work towards. I think that, teachers who have chosen to be in education know that it's work. I mean, we don't have just a 40-hour work week. We're working, mornings, evenings, weekends to make sure that we do have lessons that are engaging for students. And I don't think that shifting to mastery-based learning is going to take a lot more effort. In the beginning, it will, of course, but anything new takes more effort. But I think it's a readjustment to where the effort is placed.
I also think another piece of that is, in some cases, that it's helping build that independence of students and that ownership of learning that I think for a long time, not just, I think education in general, that the teacher's been the dispenser of knowledge and doing a lot of the work. This is actually sharing that work or shifting, as Melanie says, a realignment. I think that's what we're going to see the most. And teachers that, some of our pioneers, and I wish some of them were here, we did have a few of them with us last night, really have, they've seen their role look different and in a positive way. And it has been, and again, initially more work, but in the end, higher outcomes for students, and that's what we're all here for.
And I think initially it's more work because it's a shift in in their approach, but it's more just redistributing. I think, Melanie, I think you're absolutely right. It's a shift in how they're structuring the instruction so that, like Sean said, you're not just delivering information, but the students are more of a center focal point of the instructional piece.
True, but just the evaluation of the student's mastery on certain subjects, and there are certainly quite some, don't you think that will take much more time than just grading a test?
I think the students will play a center role in sort of tracking their own progress on the indicators.
And here I really see the caveat of the whole mastery-based learning concept. A lot of students will do exceptionally well with that. I do see that, and I would be a hypocrite if I would be saying that my own son is not benefiting from that as of right now. Now, that is most students, hopefully the very most students, but here comes the other 10, 20, 30% that actually do not take that very well. And those probably will take much more of an effort than they do right now. And again, this is the problem that I'm seeing, that half will do well, will cause hopefully less work for the teacher, but another half will cause significantly more. Because a lot of students, let's face it, they do not want to learn. They get no indication from home that this is a very valuable goal. And the motivation of those students and making those students meet the standards will be a major effort.
It will be, and I think that alludes to part of the reason why why the research shows to move to a mastery-based learning system is that raise that level of engagement. And that's what we've seen in the classroom, is that some of those students right now that don't appear to be motivated for whatever reason, whether it be home, whether it be just their own upbringing, their own attitude, we've seen a shift in those students because they're engaged in the task that's meaningful for them. You heard a variety of teachers talk about students having some choice in how I'm going to demonstrate that I know this, or how am I going to learn this information. The teacher's going to help facilitate that process and guide that, but where that balance comes, and obviously as students get older, they carry more of that independence, that's where the high level of engagement comes, which is part of the reason why moving to a mastery-based learning system is in place.
Yeah, I guess we just have a different assessment of how the lowest quarter of students will actually engage without being adequately forced.
Possibly, yep. Other questions? Yeah.
I guess, and I approach this from in the middle. As an educator on the one hand, where I see the benefit and value of this. I know what it feels like when a student has struggled with something and finally they get it. You're so excited, however long it took that student, like, wow, you're there now. That's awesome. Whatever we had to do to get you there, you got it, and it's a beautiful moment. I love that. As a parent, with an incoming high schooler and then 2 more after that, I wonder if we are creating an environment where kids have this freedom and the availability of however long it takes them to master a certain skill. Yes, I get that when they get to college they don't need the remedial classes, but what happens when they then get professors who don't allow them choice, and where they do have hard, fast deadlines where they have to do this? Like, what happens to them then? Or in the workforce for those going into a career where, I'm sorry if you don't like to do it this way, but this is the way we do it. What happens to the products of this sort of education system in the real world?
Some of the examples I've seen, while it seems like it's this big open choice environment, are the students take a center role in coached and guided by the teacher, but take a center role in making sure they're meeting certain deadlines.
Okay.
And if they don't, the teacher will remind them and encourage, but again, the ownership has to be on the student.
Right.
And so you know, it's back to them tracking their own progress on their indicators or the progress they're making on certain skills. It's trying to, and we talked about this in one of the groups I had in the back, building that intrinsic motivation to want to be the master of your own learning. So it's an evolution. It's not going to happen overnight, but that's sort of one of the main themes that falls within the system. So I think that built in is taking that responsibility off of the teacher and putting it onto the student, you know, owning their learning.
It's just a gray area,
Yeah.
and I get that. It's,
Yeah.
it's a new experience.
Mhm.
It's a lot of trial and error. But even deciding who gets to, you know, take that reassessment.
Mhm.
What if two kids don't meet, you know, expectation? But for one, it's because that kid tried really, really hard and just isn't getting it. But somebody else didn't really try, wasn't really paying attention, wasn't doing what he or she should have to get himself there. How is the teacher necessarily to know that all the time? And then should both of those kids be allowed to retake? The one who didn't really work so hard, but the one who really worked his tail off and just couldn't grasp that concept. So
I think those two students need different types of intervention.
Right.
Right, so we have an intervention on content, and then we have an intervention on work ethic and habits and behavior.
Yeah.
Right, and so we just have to kind of take those in two different routes and intervene as needed.
Right.
And just to clarify on the reviews and retakes, this is something that I've started in my classroom this year. And it's basically a 2-page contract.
Okay.
So when a student does not perform to his or her expectations on an assessment, I allow them to potentially redo it.
Okay.
But in order to do so, they actually have to outline a plan. So it's not like, you know what, Ms. Montagnan, I
Right.
didn't study. They need to tell me what they did not like about what they were assessed on, what the steps they're going to take in order to study or prepare to meet better expectations, and they have to have a deadline, and then they actually sign a contract with me. And then part of it is always staying with me for extra help. They don't get away with, not doing that. So, there's definitely, there's an entire plan that they outline. And some students opt not to do that because they don't want to take that onus on themselves.
So it's not a
But-
freebie.
No, it's certainly not a freebie.
No, and it's not, you failed on a Monday, you just retake on a Tuesday.
right.
There has to be
There's a
interventions
process.
You
in
have to, the
place.
student has to do something each
Sure.
week.
Right.
To demonstrate they're ready. So it is, I just want to be cognizant of people's time. It is close to 8:30. I know some of you probably need to go, but I mean, we're here if you have additional questions. I would encourage you to kind of stay tuned to the next round of these next year, and continue to be involved, continue to ask questions, and kind of watch how this unfolds next year in terms of some of our work, and then moving forward to full implementation in 17-18. So thank you for coming. I know it was a small group, but hopefully you got at least some of your questions answered, and we'll go from here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.